You ever wanted to be cool? Like dancing in some nightclubs, or committing corporate espionage? How about getting killed 50 bazillion times in quick succession as you make your way through public housing in Los Angeles? Or chase down VHS tapes that would definitely put you on the FBI's most wanted list? All this can be yours for the low price of getting sired against your will and trying to find your way through the world of darkness in Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines. An RPG released in 2004 that not only gave you abilities to turn your surroundings into an angsty teen's room who's obsessed with lacuna coil, but also gave you the opportunity to roleplay and converse with your new undead kindred. With multiple clans to choose from, each offering their own unique twist to gameplay, the possibilities and how you handle situations comes down to the choices you make and how you build your character. With that in mind, could you go through the entire game without killing anything? To find this out, I'll be playing without any patches. We're going pure base game. No exploits or glitches, and with that out of the way, let's get into it. For my character, I went Malkavian, the best clan.
Oh man, and you're a goddamn Malkavian too. Wow, you really are fucked.
I know. But with the ability to go invisible and cause people to go insane, this is gonna be pivotal when avoiding fights. For my stats, I bumped up charisma, intelligence, and wits to get a nice spread with my social skills. 2 points in security, 3 in investigation, and adding another point into invisibility to hopefully make avoiding combat just that much easier. Next we cut to a shot of my typical Tuesday nights, hanging out in seedy hotel rooms and watching a magic trick the stranger I met in an alleyway said they wanted to show me, only for that magic trick to turn into a Hotel Transylvania movie marathon, where I must have passed out, only to awake and realize that I was now Adam Sandler if he was into cosplaying as a big titty goth GF with daddy issues. Or a vampire for short. The next thing I knew, the fun police had tracked us down and went straight to staking everyone. Too bad for those bastards, the game just started and I can't be dead yet. Oh, I stand corrected. Nah, just kidding, but I am on trial for death, so it's kind of the same thing. See, in Vampire Society, a set of rules exists, aka the Masquerade. These rules allow vampires to live within society without drawing too much attention to themselves, but some things within the Masquerade require a sign-off from the acting prince, like using the power of the Hotel Transylvania movie marathon to turn new homies into vampires. This dude did not ask, and therefore the sheriff had to lay down the law. Which means I had no one to teach me the ropes. LaCroix here took me under his wings and instructed me that I had to pay him back for letting me live, which meant going to Santa Monica and talking with an agent of his. Ooh, spooky vampire work. I began to make the trek over until I got blindsided by Jake the dog. He offered to teach me the ropes, and where I have played this game before, it's been a little while, so a little refresher wouldn't hurt. Which meant here I was, sucking dudes near dumpsters. At least Jake likes it.
That's it, kid. That's what it's all about right there.
That is until someone started shooting up the place. Oh, look, here they are now. These guys are the Sabbat. Just right bastards who pack one hell of a punch. Okay, well maybe not these guys, but trust me, they're tough. Meeting back up with Jake the dog, he told me about feeding on rats. Except we won't be able to do this, as feeding on a rat straight up kills it. Remember kids, rats are friends, not food. Thankfully, my mentor is rather understanding when I tell him I just can't stomach it, so instead now it was time to learn about sneaking around. One of the Sabbat had posted up, and besides me successfully able to walk straight past him with invisibility, I was then told he needed to die for plot reasons. I don't know what the point of sneaking past him was if this was always going to be the outcome, but hey, I don't make the rules! But this was the combat section of the tutorial, and with Jake calling me a I knew exactly where this was headed. So maybe I could lure him into my mentor to help me out. And the answer is no. I tried to do all sorts of intimidating tactics here, but this XQC lookalike took the Thorfinn approach and claimed to have no enemies. Well, shit, I guess. With another kill taking place further up ahead, this seemed like a straight up fail before it even began. Not quite though. See, I may have needed the rundown on how to play the game, but you can actually skip the entire tutorial, so we're still on track. Welcome to Santa Monica! Now in town, I was off to meet with Mercurio, the agent of LaCroix, which is super easy to find as the guy literally leaves a trail right to his house. Heading inside, I get my first mission. Sounds like Mercurio was trying to score some explosives for me, and when he went to pay for them, some goons decided to Fortnite emote all over him, meaning I had to solo queue and take on the whole lobby to retrieve the goods. With this mission, there's a couple of different ways to approach this, like trying to sneak past the bouncer and antagonizing the entire drug den, pissing off the bouncer and repeating attempt 1, or my personal favorite, persuading the bouncer to let me walk straight in and scope out the joint, turning off the power outside, crawling in some vents to grab the money Mercurio lost, and then repeating step 1 again, but now with the desired results, all without killing a single person. Look at how much health I have left. This is gonna be easy. I made it back to Mercurio and dropped off the goods. He told me the reason for the explosives was much like a warehouse worker who lived primarily off refried beans and gas station food. It was time to blow up a warehouse. But the location was a bit hazy, so I would need to find a vampire named Bertram Tongue. And to do that, I would need to sort out a feud between Tongue and Therese. Not the girl on the cover, but her sister. Thankfully, it's easy to find Therese as she runs the asylum in town. No, not that kind of asylum. This kind of asylum. A fancy one where people can just let loose. Oh yeah, this is Jeanette. The actual girl in the cover art. And the best part, she's a Malkavian too. But we're not here for her. As much fun as she is to talk to, no, we're here for Therese just upstairs. She says that she can call off the feud with Tongue if we head to the Oceanside Hotel and clear it of a spooky ghost walking the halls. Welcome to the Oceanside Hotel, a spacious haunted mansion with spooky ghosts, boiler rooms that turn simple bolts into bullets, beautiful family portraits, and a room that shows what happens when the Pots and Pans Rebellion finally takes off. The kitchen will stand victor in the coming of days, or lose all intimidation factor when you leave the room. Not today, kitchen. Not today. There's also vampire artifacts here that can increase your defense, and a purple flame that really brings the room together. Now we needed some white Russians and we'll be all set, although a time travel section with a pretty pendant will have to do instead. Seems like Therese was really just interested in the fashion upgrade. Wait, is that all I came here for? Well, I'll show her then. I'll give her new necklace to the best girl, Jeanette, instead. I'm joking, don't do this. You get way more experience giving it to Therese, and by way more, I mean one more, and at this point in the game, that's pretty important. But the disappointment doesn't stop there. No, we're about to make Jeanette really sad, because now Jeanette here is going to ask me to go slice up an art gallery in town. This is a trap. If you agree to this quest, as easy as it is, you'll be face down with a boss fight that you have to kill. So instead, tell Jeanette that you can see the future and don't like the outcome. This will still progress the quest, but now you can head outside and see that the gallery was vandalized whether you're the one to do it or not. So with the quest done by someone else, we can return back to the asylum, only to get yelled at by Therese. Turns out that gallery was hers and somehow we've been framed. Trust me, this is gonna happen a lot, so we better get used to it while it's happening now. Therese is rightfully pissed and says that everything is ruined, so to make amends, she wants us to head to the local diner. Apparently, Therese told her sister she was gonna burn her bed sheets out of frustration, and now I needed to go talk to her and bring her back to the asylum. Except there's no sister here, only 4 armed gentlemen who want me dead. Yeah, this isn't good. Alright, before we go any further, now would be a really good time to go over our main abilities we'll be using to avoid combat. One being invisibility because I cannot pronounce this word correctly, and the other being fits of hysteria. I can sneak around while being invisible, but interacting with objects or bumping into people will kick me out of it. At least for now. At higher levels you can get to the point where you can just walk around freely. And with Hysteria, I can basically stun a person, allowing me to then feed on them or use them as a shield by hiding behind them. But the most crucial tactic is friendly fire. Since these thugs are all in tight proximity, I focused on the one with the shotgun, and between Hysteria and feeding, used the thugs as makeshift shields for their allies to shoot down. And this was working pretty well until there was only one thug left. So how do you do this? Through hours and hours of positioning, I got 2 thugs left. Since my invisibility didn't run out as long as I stayed still, I could regenerate my health in between attempts. And in an act of pure desperation, I would try the most Malkavian tactic yet. Standing between 2 enemies and praying that they would just shoot each other. At this point in the run, I had spent hours on just this one diner section. I tried everything I could think of. No one can come in and no one can leave, and with officially more time spent on just this one section than the entire game up to this point, it became clear that the least amount of carnage I could leave here with was 1 kill. Meaning that no, you cannot beat Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines without killing anything. And whereas there is a patch that changes this to give you an option to talk your way out of it, that option is not available to me. Theoretically, you could, I guess with enough attempts, get the 2 guys to off each other here, but I don't even want to begin to know what the probability of that is. But whereas one question is now concluded, a new one began. If we have to kill, what was the least amount of killing that needed to take place throughout the game? Well, let's find out! With the thugs dealt with, a phone call rang into the diner. This had all been a setup, and now Jeanette needed my help back at the asylum because Therese was trying to kill her. But while I was too busy trying to orchestrate Santa Monica's worst upstart diner painting company, someone had called the cops. I didn't even do anything, I swear. They killed themselves. I'm innocent. Alright, time to hide in an alleyway. Police in this game may be very intimidating, but once you run down an alleyway, they completely forget about you. And I don't blame them, it smells like piss down here. Making it back to the asylum, I ran into Therese and Jeanette? Whoa! There's no way I could have seen this coming. It's not like they look exactly the same or anything. Now, getting back on track, my persuasion wasn't high enough for this conversation because there is an option to make it to where both of them walk away from this. So, with them at ends with each other, I was forced to choose. And since experience and quest progression is the same regardless of what outcome you pick, I went with Jeanette because Therese did make me lose my no-kill run. But since I didn't kill her myself, she will not be joining my all-inclusive dead list. With that midlife crisis out of the way, I could finally progress the plot and get closer to blowing up that warehouse. Surely that won't add any kills and everyone will make it out scot-free. I walked over to this random silo that used to be mysteriously locked with the ability to not jump fences having been invented yet, and inside was Tongue, a Nosferatu who gave me the scoop on the warehouse. Turns out the Sabbat had employed a bunch of humans to work at this warehouse and now I had to go blow it up. I would need to sneak into the main office to plant the bomb. Yeah, that shouldn't be too bad. Now, I'm not great at stealth sections though, but with the power of invisibility, anyone can be good at stealth sections. I was able to sneak through a train yard and arrive at the mouth of the main warehouse. Only problem is, I needed to get up, and the only way to do that was to jump, which broke my invisibility, meaning the thugs were soon using me as target practice as I ran around. With some more looking around though, I did find a ladder leading into the rafters. And luckily, falling doesn't break stealth, so I was able to fall onto the lower levels, stun the thug by the door leading into the next room, pick the lock, and make it in. From here, I can make my way into a side room and level up my sneaking. This combined with being invisible meant I could sneak up and regain all my blood, all while the thugs stared at me, directly into my soulless eyes. And it wasn't until I dropped a train car that the entire base got alerted to my presence. Believe it or not, these guys still didn't seem phased, even as I was bouncing around from neck to neck like an all-you-can-eat buffet, all while everyone shot at me and only managed to hit each other. Ah, it's good to be a vampire sometimes. Needing to lose some heat, I walked behind a table, and although I was very clearly being stared at, I guess my pursuer lost interest and now I could finally plant the bomb. With 3 minutes on the timer, it was time to blow this place and everyone in it. Blow up. I meant up, like explode. But whereas the timer ticked down, I took the scenic route. Urgency was the least of my worries, and my reward for taking the tortoise approach to the problem was learning just how big the explosion radius was. At least vampires have the innate ability to rewind time in the case of accidents. Now with the explosion behind me and everyone safely out, because, I mean seriously, there was a giant timer in the sky. If you didn't make it out of there, it's only survival of the fittest at that point. A shaman in wolf form dropped down in front of me and then turned into what I'd imagine a typical WoW shaman player to look like. Nah, I'm kidding. Shamans are dope and Becca is only slightly less so. All he said was strange things were amiss and he had felt a disturbance in the force. And before letting me go, let me know the Sabbat would undoubtedly be hunting me down for the rest of my unnatural life. At least I'm making friends. Now back in Santa Monica, a cab arrived. This acts as a fast travel between zones in this game, and with Santa Monica completed, I could head to Los Angeles and get acquainted with the locals. What a friendly welcome! Oh, by the way, remember this guy's face in the middle. We'll be seeing a lot of him later on.
Good effort.
Okay, maybe not him specifically, but you'll see what I mean. After being saved by Nines Rodriguez here, he instructed me that the streets were a little wild, and before getting off, I'd have to head to his bar and learn the lay of the hand. I mean land. Only to make it to his bar and have everyone in here treat me like shit. I guess working for LaCroix didn't sit right with them, so they figured I just sucked by association. Damn, homie, if you gave out more main quests, I'd work for you too. Maybe be more of a pivotal role to the plot, huh? After pissing off the Anarchs, I headed over to LaCroix's tower and told him about the warehouse deletion, to which he scolded me for doing the job he asked me to do, and then decided to backhand compliment me into doing yet another job for him. A cargo ship had arrived in port, and according to Nosferatu intel, it housed the Ankaran sarcophagus. But the intel was incomplete, and with this being a pretty significant piece of vampire history, the mention of it being on board had LaCroix tasking me with going and making sure it was the real deal, along with stealing any intel I could find. It was finally time to take that cruise I've been planning. Heading aboard the Dane in an attempt to get some up-close and personal forbidden sarcophagus cuddles, my Malkavian heritage butchered a talk with a cop that put the entire ship on high alert. Luckily, grabbing a manifest for the ship was close by, which meant all I had to do now was run outside and oh my god, why are there so many cops here? Okay, so here's a strat that you're gonna see a lot moving forward. Casting Hysteria and treating each enemy as a vampire drive-through. Is it practical? Does it look goofy? Does it accomplish the goal at hand in case invisibility goes belly up? Yes, yes, and you better fucking believe it. With the tasks aboard the ship and the sarcophagus definitely there, I went to return to one of the worst drinks I've ever tasted. With a job well done, he talked down to me and said because I did such a good job, my next task would be to go check in on an elder vampire. Since he was undead, his life alert didn't really work properly and thus required many house calls. That and he kept ignoring LaCroix's phone calls. I don't blame him, this guy gives off Randall from Recess vibes. Arriving at the manor, I bumped into Nines Rodriguez, who my character found rather suspicious, but wrote it off as a symptom of leaving the place with no noticeable injuries. See, this is the Malkavian Elder's home, full of masked weirdos and guys who just want to flip your switches. This entire area is one of those run and feed sections, especially since the damage these guests dish out is infused with their unwashed foot fungus and prevents me from healing a portion of my health. The main theme of this mansion is full of nonsensical rooms with doors locked behind puzzles or traps in the basement. Oh, and the random woman in the attic. Speaking of attics, we also stumbled upon the remains of the Elder Malkavian we came to investigate. But yeah, trying to use a cell phone might be kinda hard when you look like the aftermath of exposing a ginger to sunlight. But who could have done such a thing, you may ask? Well, meet Bach. He was kindly waiting for us in the next room, and even did us a solid by adjusting the thermostat. But vampires and fire do not mix, so it was time to bounce. And to further the point of vampires and fire not mixing, here's enemies on fire! making it to the exit untreated to a cutscene showing my character jumping out the window and leaping far away from the house. But my only question is, where the hell was this when I needed to hop that fence ages ago? Did I learn this ability? Where did it come from? Returning to LaCroix, I told him about his homie's passing, to which he was immediately more enthralled about that old sarcophagus. Allegedly, he was heading to a museum, and LaCroix here wanted it for a private showing, meaning I had to go break in and bring it back, because sure, that won't look suspicious at all. And for that museum, there wasn't much to report. Some sneaking, getting shot, and then feeding on this guard to get him to drop the key, leading to the empty box the sarcophagus used to be in. The empty box the sarcophagus used to be in? Beckett, what the hell is going on? Our favorite shaman player informed me that indeed, the sarcophagus had been stolen. Shocker. LaCroix also didn't take the news well, and immediately told me to go track down a Nosferatu named Gary, as he seemed to be the broker of secrets and would know where the sarcophagus had gone. But all the intel I got was that he was somewhere beneath Hollywood, so I'd have to go talk to the Baron there to get a lead on where to go next. Heading to Hollywood, I met with Isaac the Baron. Think of it like another LaCroix, but way less of a shithead. He said he could help me track down the Nosferatu in town, but first I had to go score a VHS tape from some indie film studio. Meeting a courier from the film company who talked about how unique their camera shots were, they then handed over the tape and then tried to run away, only to get stuck on me. I gave them some time to sort out their stage fright, but it was clear a reload was in order. Thankfully, he found his footing, only to disappear into the sewers. Surely that won't be me in about an hour. So with the tape in hand, I returned to Isaac, and together we sat down to watch something your parents would have sent you to bed early for.
Help me, please.
Holy shit, your parents were hardcore! But Isaac wasn't pleased. He wanted more. The tape I brought back was only half of the entire film. So where would you keep the second part of a snuff film? At a meet and greet at the local cafe. It even sounded like the director would be there. Except instead of meeting the brilliant minds behind the film, I instead was just introduced to the cast of gremlins. These bastards, much like the denizens of the Malkavian Primogen's house, haven't washed their asses in a month, and so their melee attacks prevent some healing. But even with leading these guys through some back rooms and into a nearby crowd, not one of their tiny little heads was injured in the process. Isaac was upset at the lack of director commentary, and thus he told me I'd have to go to the director's house instead. So before heading out, I made sure to stop by my favorite merchant, Fat Larry, and picked up some new threads. Plus, they gave extra defense, so I mean, why not? I promise you, I did not know what these looked like before I bought them. I mean, look at the picture, and then look at what I'm wearing. How was I supposed to ever know? Getting back on track, it was time to meet with Death Mask Productions and get them to sign my snuff film. Eventually breaking inside, I now had to run, as there's more of these gremlins, and with these tight passageways, my ass is one swipe away from looking like mincemeat. Thankfully, I don't have to run for too long, as I was now face to face with Steve Blum. Damn, homie, you really are in everything! Can you sign my tape? Apparently asking to sign a tape isn't on his want-to-do list, as now I find myself in a boss fight. I tried to suss out the fight, but it looked like I'd only be able to leave once Steve had been taken care of. So I hopped on his head and tried to see if his gremlins could hurt him, and no. Bosses look like they cannot take damage from their own summons. So hopping on a pipe, I got to finally using those guns I've had up to this point. But whereas Steve doesn't technically die here, I'm gonna add him to the kill list, as you do have to fight him to progress, bringing our total kill count to 2 kills so far. With Steve pissed off and running off to voice act in something else, I made my way through the back of the boss room, which led into the sewers. And here begins the Warrens of the game. The Nosferatu can't show their faces above ground for fear of breaking the masquerade, so instead they live down here. And if you think this is a straightforward walk, you've got another thing coming. Besides dying, falling through the map, getting lost and ending up topside, luring enemies into a pit so I can solve water puzzles, and then struggling to flip switches that had me swimming through water currents, You'd only be half right, because now I'm finding holes in walls inside boss rooms, falling down some pipes, and now I had to strafe down sewer tunnels just to gain a little bit of extra speed while being chased by a horde of gremlins to then grab a key card to make my way with barely any health to a computer terminal to open the final way out. Please just let it be done. Oh, thank God. Well, we made it. This is the Nosferatu HQ. I managed to find a vampire artifact allowing for my invisibility to last longer, and then met with Gary, the leader of the Warrens. He admitted to knowing the sarcophagus's whereabouts, but like with any other quest in gaming, before I could learn its whereabouts, I'd have to go break his homie out of jail. But instead of being lost in Hollywood, we get to go to Chinatown. Now, Chinatown isn't like the rest of the game. Besides aesthetics, it's run by the Kuei-jin, or Asians. Vampires, Asian vampires. And while they do conform to the Masquerade somewhat, their domain is ultimately completely under control by Ming Zhao, meaning if I needed help tracking down a Nosferatu, she was the woman I needed to seek out. Or at least in theory, as when I spoke to her, she knew nothing of the sort. Some master of your domain you are. She did, however, point me in the direction of someone named Wong, who had connections with the underground and may have possibly heard something to set me on the right track. Surely those guys running away from his establishment won't throw a wrench in my plans. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course they will! Wong here said that he was too flustered to think because his daughter had just been stolen. So like the good little pawn I was, I had to go get her back. But this marks the point in the game where shit starts to get weird and out of my control. It's some real blink and you'll miss it type stuff, trust me, but here we go. Heading over to the goons' hideout who went around daughter snatching, I snuck through with invisibility. And I'm glad I did, as there was a decent amount of homies in here who would most likely give out a final death. But rather than just rush through, I wanted to see where Wong's daughter was before potentially sending this rescue mission into a mass killing. So I crept through the hideout and found her stashed way in the back rooms of the second floor. And in freeing her, she said those terrible words no one ever wanted to hear in the mid-2000s. I'll follow you. My brain immediately went into red alert. How the hell am I supposed to get you out of here alive when I didn't kill a single person to get in here? But before I could figure out a plan, the goons walked in and just started shooting up the place. But for as much as Kiki here was being hit, no numbers flashed over her head. She wasn't actually taking damage, but the goons around her were dying from friendly fire. This random woman was unkillable! And since she was following an invisible vampire, it just looked as if she just walked straight out through a shower of gunfire and was never even phased. Holy shit, this has got to be the easiest escort mission of the game! Hopefully this same type of thing doesn't happen again, but in reverse during another quest in the area, because, wow, that would suck. Returning to Wong, he informed me that the Tong may have had something to do with the missing Nosferatu, the same guys that took Kiki, and one of his informants was hot on the trail over at a nearby warehouse, so naturally I ran over. The informant told me that the Tong were indeed involved, and their leader was just over at a nightclub, but before I could leave, we got raided. Except whereas this sounds like a bad thing, the informant was packing heat! These thugs rolled in with bitch-made weaponry, and homie up above was laying down magnum rounds that sent these thugs on one-way trips to the afterlife. I expected this to be a mess, but due to me running around and being a distraction, we had this warehouse on lockdown. That is until reinforcements rolled in. Rest in peace, homie, but I got a dip. And thankfully with this warehouse, I can leave without murdering anyone. The nightclub where the boss hid, not so much however. So, what happened? Well, I walked in and stealthed up, sneaked past all the guards, and made my way to Johnny Tong, the leader, who happened to be on a call with a shrouded figure. But whoever that figure was definitely seemed to know what I was, which made Tong attack. However, with him being the only one in the office and not being able to talk to the TV with Tong under the effects of hysteria, this meant I was going to have to get creative here. So antagonizing a nearby goon to charge me with his knife, which isn't too hard to pull off due to my character's revealing pants, I dragged the goon into Johnny's room and tried the old hysteria meat shield trick, except whereas Kiki used the power of being an important NPC to walk out of gang territory, Johnny used it to prevent damage from his goons, meaning dear old Johnny here caught his last dose of buckshot and now I could talk to the Mandarin. His code name, not mine. He informed me that we would be meeting soon. I guess that means it's time to check out the spooky corporate building. Oh look, a Mandarin! Turns out this guy works for an organization that specializes in killing vampires, and after having a very one-sided argument with him, I agreed to do his tests, mainly because I couldn't leave the building. So here I was to test out some vampire killing methods like UV light, which did jack shit, and saw blades, because as everyone knows, vampires are the only things that saw blades can kill. Should I tell the guy that their blades need oiling? Moving forward, I arrived at the Helsing experiment. A kind gentleman holds up a crucifix to kill me, but at the mere sight of me, ran away. I ran with him as I wasn't sure what could possibly be chasing us, but it was clear what I would have to do to progress. Now, before we move forward, allegedly if you wait long enough, the Mandarin will send in a kill squad for you to take out and progress. But after 5 minutes of messing around with this hazmat guy, it was clear that moment wasn't going to come. So, hazmat guy here joins the kill list. This pissed off the Mandarin and in came a SWAT team. And like many tried and true team killings, I got passed around from guard to guard like some kind of frisky parasite. But also like with team killings, that meant that the last person standing would have to join the kill list as there was no way to take him out otherwise. And like any frisky parasite, when confronted about the lack of rent money for 2 months in a row, I then exploded. And this allowed me to break out and move freely through the facility. Well, almost. I found the Mandarin who wanted to fight me, but instead saw a vampire in a locked room. I decided to use some experience points I had saved up to boost my lockpicking, and this combined with Blood Buff, a vampire power that all kindred get to boost stats, allowed me to break in and free the Nosferatu I had been chasing, Barbarous. Barbarous here was a great help for this section, as not only did he take out the Mandarin saving me from another kill, but he also fought off any cop that showed up while I hacked computers. Meaning the entire rest of the Foo Syndicate was just watching him one-shot guards over and over again. With Barbarous freed, Gary gave me a call that I just couldn't figure out if I was supposed to answer, but after finally deciding to hear him out, he told me that the sarcophagus I chased could be found at a dinner party at the Giovanni residence. Now getting in is actually pretty easy, so long as you don't piss off the guards outside or the denizens inside. All you have to do is cast Hysteria on this woman, causing her to vomit up blood, you know, a typical party event, and allowing us to steal her invitation. This would allow us to walk around and mingle with other guests, or we could skip all of that and just activate a secret passage and head into a room filled with zombies. Oh no, zombies! Welcome to the biggest kill count yet. To proceed this part of the game, you need to kill a minimum of 6 zombies before the door at the end of the hall opens up. But besides that, you can run through the rest of the area without so much as brushing up against another enemy, because undead contact is yucky. But whereas we just killed 6 zombies, the kills don't stop there. I introduced you to the Chang brothers, who just happen to be guarding the Onkarn sarcophagus. And yes, you guessed it, they gotta die. And besides getting flown up and finding a shooting spot that I wasn't going to use, this fight showed just how hard it is when you're in a melee fight with a character dedicated to only social skills and picking locks. Oh look, I did it! Looks like frenzy and getting lucky with melee attacks will always triumph over skill, any day. With the sarcophagus in tow, I made my way back to LaCroix, who was over the moon that he'd be able to fondle whatever was inside his prized box. Except where we may have had the sarcophagus itself, wouldn't you know that we didn't have a key to open it? Yes, we need a special key to open this thing. Everyone's favorite shaman filled us in that the only archaeologist who had any idea on how to open this thing had just so happened to be captured by hunters. And this section required some finesse. Since I made the error of not refilling my blood before heading in, this meant that I couldn't really use my vampire abilities, and with the risk of frenzy that could cause me to murder a hunter against my will, I had to lure hunters away from their groups to drain them of their blood, mainly because these guys didn't play around with little 38 pistols or knives. No, they went straight for the augs, katanas, and lasers! Meaning if I overstepped, I was sent straight to hell by very capable hunters. I mean, these homies had it all! But invisibility still wins the day as I could reprogram their lasers, allowing me to pass and to make my way through the base. There's not a whole lot to say about this, but my god. The boss at the end? I've got more than a few for him. And one is dog shit. If you don't have a high gun skill or lots of ammo, this fight boils down to running back and forth with my silly little knife to get maybe 1 to 2 hits in, and then to get flashbanged more than a Call of Duty lobby, only to then have to run all the way across the entire arena to repeat the process again. And since you can just huddle up and regenerate health, this doesn't make it a hard fight, it just makes it a long one. And the absolute worst part is it's a mandatory kill. Bach, you're the worst. With Bach taken down, I met with the archaeologist who spilled the beans that while he knew of the key, he didn't know where it was because it was stolen even before the sarcophagus was. What? The plot thickens. And to add a little extra spice, Bach here wanted to relive the ending of Resident Evil 4 and set the whole base to explode, meaning it was time for the race against the clock with its teleporting boat that led straight to the sewers? What? Well, at least I'm back in down. What the hell happened here? Yeah, that can't be good. Returning to LaCroix, he informed me that the Sabbat had heard about our searches for keys and mummified corpses and wanted to see what all the fuss was about. But LaCroix didn't like people trying to take his toys and now put out a hit on the entire clan. Told ya, hella Randall vibes here. But the Sabbat are pushovers, so clearing them out should be easy, right? What the fuck was that? And that was just the regular enemies! Surprisingly, I didn't have to kill anyone, but that was thrown out the window for this mage guy over here. However, that's nothing in comparison for what comes next! Steve Blum makes a return in between jobs, and because of the slog required to get here, I had almost no resources left, meaning I had to damn near perfect this boss, with 1 or 2 hits to spare. The strat was to watch for Steve to jump out of the pools of blood and get off a few shotgun shots while trying to keep distance. But damage-wise, this was going to take a bit, but whereas the shotgun may not have been the best choice, I grabbed a torch from the room, and this appeared to be just fast enough to deal damage and get out of the range of any follow-up attacks. Most of the time. I did get a little bit lucky where sometimes in between leaving the area to pop out somewhere else, the boss would just walk around, and this gave me some time to use the shotgun and dish out tons of damage. But even with these tactics, this still took me about half an hour to get him down, and if you think this is bad, this isn't even the hardest fight of the run. Oh god, it gets so much worse! Making a topside, I ran into Ming Zhao, and boy did she have the tea. She said that her and LaCroix had been in cahoots this entire time, and she had been trying to do her own research all while pretending to be Nines Rodriguez, like killing the Malkavian Primogen. And while I confronted LaCroix about all this, all he had to say was, shit happens. He then did a complete 180 and told me the Kuei Jin were the problem and needed dealt with. Just whose fucking side are you on? With the Kuei Jin next on the hit list, it was time to stock up on supplies, which meant visiting vendors and getting rid of all my useful items, and then getting interrogated by my TV. Yes, you heard me right.
Did you hear the one about the tuna and the chef?
Society going to hell or not?
I think so.
A tuna walks into a sushi restaurant, says to the chef, "Hey, you killed my father." Chef says to the tuna, "That's my business, fish." Tuna thinks about it, says, "Then I challenge you to a game of chess. If I win, you stop being a chef forever. And if I win," asks the chef, "you can feed me to your customers." Tuna replies. So the chef and Tuna play chess. Tunas love to play chess, so in a few moves, the chef was checkmated. "Well, looks like I win," says the tuna. Chef nods and plunges his knife into the fish's belly. "But I won," says the tuna, as he feels the knife wiggling into his guts.
That's a shame.
"So did your father," says the chef.
With supplies sorted, I had to track down Nines Rodriguez and tell him that LaCroix did an oopsie and said it was all just one big misunderstanding. You want to know what else was a misunderstanding? Nines here was hiding out on a lookout over the city, and where we two vampires were having a chat, we must have said "good boy" one too many times as the werewolf tried to come play fetch with Nines' body, but realizing Nines didn't bring a ball to play with, the werewolf was pissed and now wanted to play with me. This cued a 3-minute chase sequence where I just looped the werewolf over and over to bait out the time. "Bad dog, no playtime for you." But before I could leave, Jake met up with me and brought me back to my apartment. Inside, he told me that LaCroix had put a hit out on my head. But I mean, am I even really surprised anymore? Like, I can't keep up with the double crossings. Like, holy shit, man, this whole political struggle is just one backstab after another. And to make matters worse, I was now being framed with killing Nines. Who could have predicted this? This meant I was now public enemy number 1 as I ran through Santa Monica avoiding tons of vampires. And by tons, I mean like 5. They weren't super motivated, however, and as I made it to a taxi cab and declared myself as safe, they just gave up. Maybe they're just as confused as I am. Hopping into the taxi, this was the final major decision of the game. How do I handle the Kuei Jin and LaCroix? Frankly, this decision had already been decided ages ago. Being Malkavian, the only logical sense was to do the most illogical thing, meaning I sided with LaCroix. And before you ask why and come at me with pitchforks, it's because it requires the least amount of kills. LaCroix was over the moon at this revelation and welcomed me back with his fingers crossed behind his back. But the matter of the Kuei Jin still stood. Guess who has to go on another assassination mission? And this is the part that I fucked up. I had the option to restock on supplies, but I figured I was fine, even after receiving some money, but as you'll see, that may not have helped much. Arriving at the Kuei Jin temple, I did what I did best and snuck through, and also alerted practically the entire temple. Look, you can't have it one way all the time, you have to spice it up. Honestly, it wasn't too much of a hassle besides the archers with fire arrows. Everyone else had melee weapons, which meant picking them off the feed wasn't as hard once I lost most of the pack. And by this point, I had my invisibility up to the point where I could pretty much run around and do whatever I wanted. Making it to the lower sections, now I had to perform one of the hardest puzzles in gaming by matching statues to the pedestal. I'm joking, by the way. I may be bad at puzzles, but this was pretty straightforward. Especially when the hardest thing about getting the pieces was the traps in the floor. With the puzzle sorted, a portal opened, allowing me to reach Ming Zhao and put an end to her reign of backstabs. Except whereas this sounded optimistic, I severely underestimated this fight. With questionable hitboxes, massive damage, stuns, and the fact that she could create copies of herself if her fallen limbs weren't dealt with fast enough, my low damage skills, and her insane health pool. This fight was going to be the hardest fight I've done in a while. And I hate to say it, but this fight boiled down to using Dark Souls strategies. I'd get in close, hit a few times while weaving in between attacks, only to then run away and recoup. If I was lucky between dodging attacks and running from one end of the room to the other, I could regain some health, usually allowing me to take one more hit. And while this boss does have a reputation for being a slog, the lack of defensive and offensive talents meant I was in this for the long haul. And in a game where combat is quick and violent, I had to take things methodical and not get risky, resulting in a fight that took 3 hours to take down. The entire Sabbat section of the game was very similar in length, but whereas that was an entire base and a boss at the end, this was just one tentacle lover's wet dream that overstayed its welcome. So you can imagine the happiness I felt when this bitch was dead. This allowed me to grab the key for the sarcophagus and then take a portal straight to LaCroix's tower, where we could finally open this damn MacGuffin.
So, Ming Zhao is dead, and soon all her devils will share her fate. Los Angeles at last is mine. Come, Stand next to me while we open the sarcophagus. You've earned a place at my side. The Ankaran sarcophagus. Who sleeps within you? Is it Balthazar? Maybe Lazarus? Or am I to be reunited with Ventru himself? Or could the anxiety coursing through the city mean that before us slumbers the legendary father of all, Cain himself? One thing is certain. Power is inside. No one on this coast will be able to challenge my rule. Not even the Camarilla. You've earned the right. Open the sarcophagus. No! It can't be! No!
Alright, while the end few sections of this game made me want to jump out my ground floor window, I did enjoy my time with Vampire the Masquerade. And as far as kills are concerned, we clocked in at 17 kills for the run. Again, while I counted the first time we fought Steve as a boss, some of you may not. And if the Helsing experiment caused the Goon Squad to roll in, maybe I could have reduced another kill, but that's just how things roll. I'd be happy to do another run of Vampire the Masquerade in the future, but I'm definitely going to take a break for a bit as this is a bit of a longer video. Before we go, I have a Dragon Age video being worked on in the background that is already making me regret life decisions, so be on the lookout for that in the future. Before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to the patrons over on Patreon and to the channel members. You guys continue to fuel these struggle fests and I can't thank you enough. I want to thank you, the viewer, for watching this video and I hope you have an amazing day because you deserve it. As always, I've been Chris from Crisis Gaming, and I'll see you on the next one.